He wasn't trained to save her, but somehow he knew before the world did that something was about to go wrong, the kind of wrong that doesn't make a sound until it's already too late. The street looked ordinary at first glance, just another late afternoon in a quiet American town where traffic lights blinked between red and green, and people moved with the steady rhythm of routine. The air carried the faint scent of warm asphalt and distant rain not yet fallen, but waiting like a held breath. Lily Harper stood at the edge of the crosswalk, her white cane tapping gently against the pavement, one step at a time, counting like she always did. 1, 2, 3, pause. Her world was built on sound and texture, on memory and trust. She tilted her head slightly, listening to the hum of engines, the shuffle of shoes, the faint rustle of a breeze brushing past storefront windows. She couldn't see the sky darkening above her or the way shadows stretched long across the road. She couldn't see the car either, silent. Electric, no engine growl, no warning, just a shape moving too fast for anyone to notice until it mattered. Across the street, Ethan Cole stood still, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp, the way they had been trained to be years ago, in places where noticing the smallest detail meant the difference between life and something else, something quieter. He wore a worn denim jacket, sleeves pushed just high enough to reveal the ink on his right forearm, a German shepherd etched in black and gray, its eyes alive even in stillness. Beside him, Rex stood, alert, not tense, not anxious, just aware, his ears flicking once, as if catching a frequency no one else could hear. Ethan's hand rested loosely on the leash, but his grip tightened without him realizing it, a subtle shift, something instinctive, something buried deeper than thought. Rex didn't bark, he didn't growl, he just leaned forward ever so slightly, his body aligning with something invisible, something approaching. Before it arrived, Ethan followed the movement, confused for a fraction of a second. Then he saw Lily stepping forward into the crosswalk, her cane tapping again, 1, 2, 3, unaware of the silent shape, closing the distance behind the curve of the road. There was no horn, no shout, just the quiet inevitability of motion and timing slipping out of sync. Ethan's breath caught, not loud, not dramatic, just enough for his chest to tighten as Rex suddenly pulled, not a gentle tug, but a sharp, deliberate force that snapped the leash taut. Ethan's boots shifted against the pavement, caught between control and release. Rex, he said low, instinctively, but the dog was already moving. The leash slipped from Ethan's hand, not because he let go, but because he couldn't hold on to something that had already chosen its direction. Rex ran fast and focused, his paws striking the ground with purpose, cutting through the space between moments. Lily took another step, her face calm, her expression soft. In that quiet concentration she always carried, trusting the world to stay predictable just a few seconds longer, just enough to reach the other side. Rex reached her in a blur of motion, not stopping, not hesitating. He didn't pull her gently or guide her aside, he collided with her shoulder, firm and precise enough to shift her balance, just enough to move her out of the path. She didn't know she was in. The sound came after a rush of displaced air, a sharp intake of breath from somewhere in the crowd. The car passed where she had been, a heartbeat earlier, too fast to register fully, too silent to warn anyone before it was gone. The world seemed to pause, as if everything needed a second to understand what had just happened. Lily stumbled, but didn't fall, her cane clattering softly against the pavement as she steadied herself, her hands reaching out, searching for the sudden absence of space that had been filled a moment ago. What was that? She whispered, her voice small but steady, unaware of how close the moment had come to becoming something else. Ethan was already moving, his steps quick but controlled, his eyes locked on Rex, who now lay still on the asphalt, not dramatically, not with any visible struggle, just still, as if the energy that had carried him forward had quietly settled into the ground beneath him. Ethan dropped to one knee beside him, his hand hovering for a split second before resting gently against the dog's side, feeling for something, anything, the faint rise and fall of breath, the subtle warmth of life. Rex had always been more than a dog. He was presence, instinct, something that filled silence with meaning, and now that silence felt heavier than it should have been. Lily turned toward the sound of Ethan's voice, her head tilting again, listening more carefully this time. "Is he okay?" she asked softly, her fingers curling slightly, as if reaching for something she couldn't see. Ethan didn't answer right away, not because he didn't want to, but because in that suspended moment he wasn't sure what the truth was. Yet the street around them remained quiet, the kind of quiet that follows something almost lost, something narrowly kept. And somewhere beneath that stillness, something unseen began to shift, like a breath waiting to return for a moment. Nothing moves, not the traffic light, not the people gathering at the edges of the sidewalk, not even the wind that had been drifting lazily between buildings as if the entire street is holding its breath waiting for something to decide how this moment will end. Ethan keeps his hand against Rex's side, his fingers pressing gently through the thick, first searching for a sign that refuses to come quickly enough, his heartbeat loud in his ears, steady but heavy the way it used to be before something important slipped through his grasp. "Come on, buddy," he murmurs low, not a command, not even a plea, just a voice trying to reach something deeper than sound. Rex does not respond, not yet, his body still warm, but unmoving. As if caught between two worlds, Lily takes a careful step forward, her shoes brushing softly against the pavement, her hand extended, uncertain but determined. "Sir, where is he?" she asks again, her voice quieter, now more fragile. Ethan glances up at her, then back at Rex, his jaw tightening just slightly before he answers. "He is right here," he says, steady but softer than before. "You are safe." Lily nods slowly, as if absorbing the words in layers, the way she processes everything. She kneels carefully, her fingers hovering in the air until they find Rex's shoulder. She hesitates for a brief second, then lets her hand rest against him gently, as if afraid that too much pressure might break something unseen. "He ran into me," she whispers, more to herself than to anyone else. "But I felt him before that." Ethan looks at her sharply, not in disbelief, but in recognition of something that does not fit into logic. "What do you mean?" he asks. Lily tilts her head slightly, her expression thoughtful, as if she is searching through memory that is still forming. "I do not know. It was like something changed in the air," she says slowly, "like someone was already there before he touched me." The words settle between them, quiet but heavy. Ethan exhales slowly, his hand still resting on Rex, his thumb brushing slightly along the dog's fur, as if trying to remind him of something familiar around them. Voices begin to rise, low murmurs first, then clearer tones, people asking if everything is all right, if someone has called for help, if anyone saw what happened. A distant siren begins to echo, faint but growing closer, carried through the air like a thread pulling the moment forward. Ethan barely hears any of it, his focus narrowing to the space between his hand and Rex's stillness. He has seen this before, not exactly like this, but close enough to recognize the edge, the place where things either return or they do not. And in that space, there is no control, only waiting. Lily shifts slightly, her hand moving from Rex's shoulder to the side of his neck, her fingers trembling just enough to show that she understands more than she is saying. "He is not gone," she says softly, almost certain, not hopeful, but certain. Ethan's eyes flicker toward her again. "You cannot know that," he replies. Quietly, not harsh, just honest. Lily shakes her head slightly, her hair brushing against her cheek. "No. I mean, I can feel it." She presses her palm a little firmer against Rex, as if listening through her touch. "It is faint, but it is there." Ethan freezes, not outwardly, but inside. Something pauses, the doubt, the memory, the weight of everything he has learned to expect from moments like this. He shifts his hand slightly, adjusting his position, his fingers pressing again, more carefully this time. And then he feels it, not strong, not steady, just a whisper of movement beneath his palm, a breath so shallow it could be mistaken for nothing if you were not paying attention. But Ethan is paying attention, his shoulders lower, just a fraction, not relief, not yet, but something closer to belief. Yeah, I got it," he murmurs, more to himself than anyone else. Lily lets out a small breath, one she did not realize she had been holding, her hand still resting on Rex, as if she refuses to let go of whatever connection. She feels the siren grows louder, now closer, tires rolling against pavement as a vehicle slows nearby. Footsteps approach, quick but controlled. Voices trained to assess, to respond, to stabilize. Ethan does not look up immediately. He stays where he is, his hand steady, his focus locked on the quiet rhythm returning beneath Rex's fur. "Stay with me," he says again, this time softer, almost a whisper, not a command, not a request, just a presence, the kind that does not force, but remains. And for the first time since the moment began, Rex's body shifts, not much, not dramatic, just enough, a small movement in his chest, a deeper breath following the first. Like something inside him is remembering how to continue. Ethan closes his eyes briefly, not in exhaustion, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement of something that does not need explanation. When he opens them again, the world begins to move once more. The traffic light changes, a car in the distance slows, people step closer, voices become clearer. The moment resumes its place in time, but something about it has already changed. Lily smiles faintly, her fingers still resting on Rex, her head tilted, slightly as if listening to something only she can hear. I told you, she says quietly, not with pride, not with certainty, just with calm. Ethan looks at her for a second longer than necessary, then back at Rex, and for a brief moment something unspoken passes between all three of them, not seen, not measured, but understood in a way that does not require sight. The paramedics move in with quiet urgency, not rushed, not careless, but precise, the way people learn to be when seconds matter and panic only makes things worse. One of them kneels beside Ethan, already reaching for a stethoscope, while the other gently guides the growing crowd back. With calm, firm gestures, Ethan shifts slightly, but does not move away, his hand still resting on Rex, as if contact itself is part of what is keeping the moment together. We have got him, the paramedic says, not as an order, but as reassurance. Ethan nods once slowly, though his fingers hesitate before lifting, like letting go might undo something fragile beneath the surface. Lily remains kneeling, her hand still on Rex, her head tilted, in that same quiet, listening posture, the world around her filling in piece by piece through sound, footsteps, voices, the soft crackle of a radio, the distant hum of traffic returning to normal. Is he going to be okay? She asks, her voice steady, but carrying a softness that makes the question feel heavier than it sounds. The paramedic glances at her, then back at the dog, his expression focused, but not grim. He is breathing, that is a good sign, he says carefully, not promising more than he knows, but not taking away hope either. They work quickly, checking pulse, adjusting position, placing a small oxygen mask gently over Rex's muzzle, the faint hiss of air joining the rhythm that had only just returned. Ethan stands slowly, his knees stiff from the ground, but his eyes never leaving Rex as they prepare to lift him onto the stretcher. The movement is smooth, practiced, Rex's body supported carefully, as if he is something more than just a patient, as if even they can feel that this moment carries something beyond routine. Lily rises more slowly, using her cane to steady herself, her hand lingering in the air for a second after Rex is lifted, as if she is still reaching for him. Can I come? She asks quietly, not directed at anyone specific, just spoken into the space where decisions are made. Ethan looks at her, then at the paramedic before answering. Yeah, you should, he says, his voice low, but certain. He would want that. The words come without hesitation, surprising even him, as if they had already been decided somewhere deeper. The paramedic nods once, gesturing toward the back of the ambulance. We have room, he says simply. The doors open with a soft metallic sound, revealing the clean, bright interior that contrasts with the muted tones of the street outside. Ethan helps Lily step up, guiding her carefully, his hand steady at her elbow. She moves with trust, not asking questions, not needing explanations. Inside the ambulance, the air smells faintly of antiseptic and something cooler, something controlled. Machines hum quietly, lights steady, and unwavering. Rex is secured on the stretcher, his chest rising more evenly now, though still shallow. Ethan takes a seat beside him, one hand resting lightly against his side, not pressing, just there. Lily sits across from them, her hands folded in her lap for a moment before she reaches out again. Can I? She asks softly. Ethan nods immediately. Yeah, he says, he knows you are here. Lily leans forward, her fingers finding Rex's fur once more, this time more certain, less hesitant, as if the connection she felt before has not faded but grown clearer. Hi. She whispers the words, simple but full of something that does not need elaboration. The ambulance doors close with a solid sound, sealing them inside as the vehicle begins to move, the motion gentle at first, then steady as they merge back into the rhythm of the road outside. The siren remains off, no urgency in noise, only in purpose, the quiet hum of the engine filling the space between breaths. Ethan watches Rex closely, every small movement, every shift in rhythm cataloged without effort, years of training blending with something more personal, something harder to name. He has done this before, Ethan says after a moment, his voice low, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the balance. Lily turns her head slightly toward him. Saved someone? She asks. Ethan shakes his head slowly. No. Known something before it happens, he replies, his gaze still fixed. Back when I was in service, there were times he reacted before anything was visible, before sound, before movement, like he was reading something the rest of us could not see. Lily listens quietly, her expression thoughtful. Maybe he still is, she says simply. Ethan exhales softly, not dismissing the idea, not fully accepting it either, but holding it somewhere in between where things do not need to be. Explained to be real, the ambulance turns gently, the motion shifting the light across Rex's fur for a brief second. His ear twitches small, almost imperceptible, but enough Ethan notices immediately, his hand adjusting. Slightly. Hey. He murmurs, not louder, just closer. Stay with me. Lily smiles faintly, her fingers still resting against Rex, as if anchoring him in place. He is not leaving, she says softly, and this time Ethan does not question it, not because he understands, but because something in the way she says it feels certain, in a way logic cannot challenge. Outside, the world continues moving, cars passing, people walking, lights changing, but inside, the ambulance time feels different, slower, more deliberate each second, carrying weight, until suddenly Rex's chest rises a little deeper than before, not dramatic, not sudden, just enough to shift the air in the space around them. Ethan's shoulders drop, slightly, a breath he did not know he was holding finally released. Lily tilts her head again, listening, and then nods once. See, she whispers, and in that quiet moving space between what is known and what is felt, something settles into place, not as an answer, but as a truth that does not need one. The ambulance slows as it turns into the hospital drive, the tires rolling gently over painted lines and shallow cracks in the pavement, the outside world shifting from open street to something more contained, more controlled. The building rises ahead, glass and steel reflecting the fading light of the afternoon, while automatic doors slide open as if already expecting them. Inside, the air changes, cooler, cleaner, carrying the quiet hum of machines and distant voices, layered over one another like a rhythm that never fully stops. The stretcher moves quickly but not rushed, guided through wide hallways under bright lights that reveal every detail. Without warmth, Ethan walks beside Rex, one hand still resting lightly against him, as if the connection must not be broken, not yet, not here. Lily follows just behind, guided by a nurse who speaks softly, telling her where to step, where to turn, but Lily's focus remains fixed somewhere ahead, not with her eyes, but with that same quiet awareness she has carried since the moment everything shifted. We are taking him in for evaluation. A voice says, calm, professional, steady. Ethan nods, though he does not fully register the words, not because he does not understand, but because understanding feels secondary to staying present. The doors to the treatment room swing open, and then close behind them, leaving Ethan and Lily standing in the hallway, where the light feels brighter and the silence feels louder. Without Rex in front of them, Ethan's hand lowers slowly, the absence immediate and unfamiliar, like something essential has just stepped out of reach. He exhales long and controlled, his shoulders rising, then settling as he leans back slightly against the wall, not out of exhaustion, but out of habit, grounding himself in something solid. Lily stands a few feet away, her cane resting lightly against the floor, her head tilted just enough to suggest she is listening to everything at once. Footsteps passing, voices echoing, distant monitors beeping in steady intervals. He is still there, she says softly, breaking the quiet. Ethan turns his head toward her, studying her for a moment, as if trying to understand how she knows what she says. You can feel that, he asks, not skeptical, just curious. Lily nods once slowly. It is like when someone is standing close, even if they do not speak, you know they are there. She explains, her voice calm, certain. He feels like that. Ethan looks down at his hand, then back toward the closed doors, his fingers flexing slightly, as if remembering the rhythm they had just held. He has always been like that, Ethan says after a moment, his voice lower, now more reflective. Even when he was a pup, he would react to things before anyone else. Sometimes it felt like he was listening to something we could not hear. Lily smiles faintly, her expression soft. Maybe he is not listening, she says quietly. Maybe he is answering. The words settle between them, not heavy, not dramatic, just present, like a truth that does not need to be pushed. The hallway continues to move around them, nurses passing, carts rolling, distant announcements echoing softly. Overhead, time stretches not in minutes, but in moments, each second marked by the absence of news. Until finally the doors open again, a doctor steps out, removing gloves, his expression composed, but not distant. Ethan straightens immediately, his posture shifting from stillness to attention without effort. How is Ethan? Asks the question direct, but measured. The doctor nods once. He is stable, he says, breathing on his own, heart rate steady, no internal complications that we can see at this point. Ethan's shoulders drop, just slightly, the tension easing, but not disappearing. He needs rest and monitoring, but right now he is holding on. Lily lets out a small breath, her hands relaxing at her sides. Can we see him? She asks softly. The doctor hesitates only for a fraction of a second before nodding, one at a time for now. But yes, he gestures toward the door, stepping aside. Ethan looks at Lily first, then back at the door. You go, he says simply. Lily tilts her head, slightly surprised. Are you sure? She asks. Ethan nods. Yeah. He came for you, he replies quietly. Lily steps forward, guided gently into the room, the door closing softly behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the hallway. Once more the silence returning, but different this time, less heavy, more patient. Inside the room the lights are softer, the machines quieter. Rex lies on a clean surface, a light blanket draped over part of his body, his chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. Lily moves carefully, her steps measured, until she reaches the edge of the bed. Her hand lifts, hesitates, then finds him again, her fingers resting against his fur, warm, alive, present. Hi. She whispers again, softer than before, but filled with something deeper, something steadier. Rex does not open his eyes, not yet, but his breathing shifts just slightly, as if recognizing the presence beside him. Lily smiles, her hand moving gently along his neck. You did not have to do that, she murmurs, not as a question, but as a reflection. But you did anyway. For a moment, nothing else changes. The machines continue their quiet work. The lights remain steady. The world outside the room keeps moving, but inside something holds still. And then, almost imperceptible, Rex's tail moves, not a full wag, not even a clear motion, just a faint shift against the sheet, but enough Lily feels it. Instantly, her breath catching softly. I knew it. She whispers, her fingers curling slightly into his fur, as if anchoring that moment in place. Outside, Ethan stands with his back against the wall, eyes closed for just a second longer than usual, and in that stillness he does not ask for anything, he does not bargain, he does not question, he just stands and waits, because sometimes that is all faith looks like, when it has nothing left to prove. The room remains quiet in that fragile way, where every small sound feels amplified, the soft hum of the monitor, the faint shift of fabric as Rex breathes, the distant echo of footsteps beyond the closed door. Lily does not move away, her hand still resting against him, as if she understands that presence matters more than anything words could offer. Her fingers trace slowly along the side of his neck, not searching, not checking, just staying there, steady and sure. You felt it too, didn't you? She whispers, her voice barely above a breath, as if speaking too loudly might break whatever invisible thread is holding this moment together. Rex's ear flicks again, slightly more this time, a subtle acknowledgement that travels through his body like a quiet ripple. His breathing deepens. Not dramatically, but enough to feel more certain, more anchored in the space around him. Lily smiles a little wider, not surprised, not startled, just calm, as if this is exactly what she expected to happen. Outside in the hallway, Ethan opens his eyes again, pushing himself off the wall slowly, his body moving with that same controlled discipline he has carried for years. But there is something softer, now something less guarded. He glances toward the door, then down at his right arm, where the inked outline of the German Shepherd rests against his skin, the lines worn slightly with time, but still sharp, still present. He runs his fingers over it briefly, not out of habit, but out of connection, a reminder of something that has always been there, even before Rex walked into his life. The door opens quietly, and Lily steps out, her movements careful, but lighter than before, her face carrying a calm that does not need explanation. Ethan straightens slightly, his attention shifting fully to her. How is he asks, though something in his tone suggests he already knows. Lily tilts her head toward him, a soft smile forming. He is still here, she says simply. Ethan lets out a breath, not sharp, not sudden, just a release that settles deeper than relief. Yeah, he murmurs, more to himself than to her. Yeah, he is. The doctor steps out behind her, glancing between them with a small nod. He is responding well, he says. It may take some time for him to fully recover, but there is no sign of lasting damage. We will keep him overnight just to be safe. Ethan nods, once his shoulders relaxing slightly as the words settle in. Thank you, he says quietly. The doctor gives a brief professional smile before moving on, leaving them again in that shared space between silence and understanding. Lily shifts her cane lightly against the floor, then turns her head toward Ethan. Can I come back tomorrow? She asks, her voice gentle but certain. Ethan does not hesitate. You do not have to ask, he replies. He will be looking for you. Lily nods slowly, as if that answer makes perfect sense. I think I will be looking for him too, she says softly. The moment lingers for a second longer before a nurse approaches, speaking quietly about Visiting hours about where Lily's family has been contacted about arrangements that will bring her home safely. Lily listens, nodding when needed, but her hand lifts once more in the direction of the room behind her, as if saying something without words before she allows herself to be guided away. Ethan watches her go, his gaze steady, thoughtful, not just because of what happened, but because of what it meant, something about her presence, about the way she knew without seeing, about the way Rex responded. Without being called, it settles into him in a way he cannot fully explain. He turns back toward the door, then reaches for the handle, pausing only briefly before stepping inside the room again. Rex lies in the same position, but something has shifted. The stillness is no longer empty, it is resting. Ethan moves closer, his boots quiet against the floor, until he stands beside him again, his hand returning to that familiar place along Rex's side. This time without hesitation. "You picked her," Ethan says, softly, his voice low and even. "Out of everyone, you picked her." Rex's breathing remains steady, but his tail moves again, a little more defined this time, brushing lightly against the sheet. Ethan lets out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, but without sound. "I figured." He murmurs, his hand resting a little firmer, now grounding both of them in the same space for a moment. Nothing else happens, no dramatic change, no sudden movement. Just the quiet continuation of something that had already begun outside on that street, something that did not need explanation or reason, just presence, just connection. Ethan pulls a chair closer and sits down beside the bed, his posture relaxed, but attentive, the way someone sits when they are not planning to leave anytime soon. The hours begin to pass, slowly marked by the steady rhythm of breathing and the soft beeping of machines. The light outside fades, gradually shifting from afternoon to evening, casting a dimmer glow through the window. Ethan does not move much, his hand occasionally brushing through Rex's fur, his eyes closing for a moment, then opening again, always returning to that same point of focus. And somewhere in that quiet stretch of time, Rex's eyes open, not wide, not fully alert, just enough, a narrow slit of awareness returning. Ethan notices immediately, his posture straightening slightly, but he does not speak right away. He just watches, waiting, giving the moment space to become what it is. Rex's gaze shifts, slowly, unfocused at first, then settling, and when it does not search the room, it does not look for movement, it finds Ethan directly, as if it knew exactly where to look. Ethan exhales softly, the smallest hint of a smile forming at the edge of his expression. "Hey, partner," he says quietly, not loud, not emotional, just present. Rex blinks once, slow, deliberate. And in that simple movement, everything that needed to be said already has been. The night settles quietly over the hospital, not with silence, but with a softer version of sound, footsteps, more spaced out voices, lowered lights, dimmed just enough to signal that the day has ended, even if the work has not. Ethan remains in the chair beside Rex, his posture unchanged, but his presence deeper now, less guarded, more still, the kind of stillness that does not come from discipline, but from trust. Rex's eyes remain partially open, not fully alert, but aware enough to track the space around him, his breathing steady now, each rise and fall more certain than before. Ethan leans forward slightly, resting his forearms on his knees, his hand reaching again to brush along Rex's first slow, deliberate movements, the same rhythm he used years ago in places far from here, where quiet moments were rare and fragile. "You always did pick your moments," Ethan says softly, his voice carrying a faint edge of memory rather than humor. Rex's ear shifts again, responding not to the words, but to the presence behind them. As if the tone itself is enough. Somewhere down the hallway, a door closes gently, followed by the distant roll of a cart. The sounds blend into the background, becoming part of the steady atmosphere that fills the room. Ethan glances toward the window, the glass reflecting a faint outline of himself, the dim lighting softening the sharp edges of his features. For a moment, he studies that reflection, not critically, not even consciously, just observing the man he has become compared to the one he used to be. His gaze drops again to Rex, and something in his expression shifts, quieter, more reflective. "You knew before I did back there," he murmurs. "You always do." Rex's breathing deepens slightly, his chest rising a fraction more with each breath, as if the strength returning is no longer fragile, but building slowly. Ethan exhales softly, leaning back into the chair, his shoulders relaxing for the first time since the moment began hours earlier. The door opens quietly, and a nurse steps in, her movements careful, practiced. She checks the monitor, glances at Rex, then at Ethan, offering a small, reassuring nod. "He is doing very well," she says softly. "His vitals are stable, and he is responding better than expected. Ethan nods once his voice low. He is stubborn like that. The nurse smiles faintly, adjusting a line before stepping back. That can be a good thing. She replies before leaving the room as quietly as she entered. The door closes again, and the room returns to its steady rhythm. Ethan lets the silence settle, not empty, but full of everything that has already happened, everything that has not been said. He shifts slightly, reaching for the small metal tag resting against Rex's collar, the edge worn smooth from years of use. He turns it gently between his fingers, the engraved letters catching the soft light, his thumb tracing over the name, as if grounding himself in something real, something unchanged. "You remember the first time we met?" Ethan says quietly, his gaze fixed on the tag rather than the dog. "You were smaller, then, not by much, but enough to think you still had something to prove." He pauses briefly, the memory unfolding in pieces. "They said you were too reactive, too independent, not the kind that follows commands without question." A faint smile touches the corner of his mouth. "Guess that is why they paired you with me." Rex's eyes shift, slightly more focused now, as if the sound of Ethan's voice is drawing him closer to the surface. Ethan looks up, meeting that gaze, and for a moment, there is no hospital, no machines, no distance between then and now, just the same connection that has carried them through everything. "You did not follow orders." Ethan continues softly. "You followed instinct. And most of the time that was better than anything we were trained to do." Rex blinks slowly, his tail giving a faint but visible movement against the sheet. Ethan lets out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh. "Yeah, I know. You are still doing it." The room remains still but not silent, the kind of stillness that holds meaning rather than absence. Outside the window, the night deepens, the last traces of daylight gone, replaced by the soft glow of streetlights casting long reflections against the glass. Ethan shifts his chair slightly closer, not because he needs to, but because it feels right, his hand resting once more against Rex's side, feeling the strength returning beneath his palm. Not just breath now, but presence. Rex's head moves slightly, turning just enough to rest more comfortably, his eyes opening a little wider this time, not fully alert, but aware enough to hold Ethan's gaze longer. Ethan leans in just slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You picked her," he says again, quieter now, more certain. "Out of everyone you could have gone to, you chose her." Rex's gaze does not waver, not searching, not questioning, just steady, as if the answer does not need to be spoken. Ethan studies him for a moment longer, then nods once to himself, as if accepting something he cannot fully explain. "I get it," he murmurs, his hand moving gently along Rex's neck, the same steady motion, the same quiet reassurance. The moment stretches, not in tension, but in understanding, something unspoken settling between them like a truth that has always been there, just waiting to be recognized. And in that quiet space between breath and memory, between instinct and reason, something becomes clear, not as a realization, but as a feeling, the kind that does not ask to be understood, only acknowledged. Rex exhales slowly, his body relaxing further into the bed, his eyes still open, still present, and Ethan sits there beside him, not as a handler, not as a soldier, but simply as someone who stayed when it mattered most. And somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the lights, beyond the measured rhythm of machines, the world continues moving, unaware that in this quiet room, something small and unseen has already changed everything. Morning arrives slowly, not with brightness, but with a gentle shift in tone. The hospital no longer dim but not fully awake either, the kind of in-between hour where light filters softly through blinds and everything feels quieter than it should. Ethan has not moved much through the night, his posture changing only slightly when needed, but his presence constant, anchored beside Rex, as if leaving was never an option. The chair creaks faintly as he leans forward again, his hand already finding that familiar place along Rex's side, the warmth there. Stronger, now no longer fragile, no longer uncertain. Rex's breathing is steady, deep enough to carry weight, his eyes open fully this time, not wide, not startled, but aware in a way that feels grounded. His gaze settles on Ethan immediately, not searching, not confused, just present. Ethan notices right away the shift, subtle but undeniable. His shoulders ease just slightly, as something inside him lets go of the last quiet tension he had been holding. "There you are," he says softly, his voice low, and even Rex blinks once, slow, deliberate, his ears adjusting to the sounds around him, the machines, the distant footsteps, the soft rustle of fabric, everything registering but not overwhelming. Ethan studies him carefully, not as a handler checking condition, But as someone recognizing a return something that had stepped away and found its way back without needing direction, the door opens quietly, and a nurse steps in, her expression calm, but with a hint of approval when she sees Rex awake. "Good morning," she says gently, her voice carrying that practiced warmth that does not feel forced. "Looks like someone decided to come back to us fully." Ethan nods, once glancing briefly at her, then back at Rex. "Yeah." He does that. The nurse checks the monitor, her eyes scanning the readings before nodding again. "He is stable, strong response overnight. We will have the doctor clear him later today. If everything continues like this." Ethan exhales softly, not relief, not surprise, just acknowledgement. The nurse finishes her check, then steps back toward the door, pausing for a moment. "You did good staying with him," she adds before leaving. Ethan does not respond right away. He just watches Rex's hand moving slowly through the fur along his neck, the same steady rhythm. Rex shifts slightly, adjusting his position, his body stronger, now more responsive, his tail giving a faint but clear movement against the bed. Ethan lets out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh. "Yeah, you are definitely back," he murmurs. The room settles again into that familiar quiet, but it feels different now, not heavy, not waiting, just present a space where nothing urgent needs to happen. The door opens again a little later, and this time the footsteps are lighter, more cautious. Lily steps in, guided by a staff member, but her posture is already oriented toward the bed, her head tilted slightly, as if she has already found what she came for. "Hi," she says softly before she even reaches him, her voice carrying that same calm certainty. Ethan stands slowly, stepping aside, without needing to be asked, giving her space, without breaking the connection. Lily moves closer, her cane tapping lightly once, then stilling as her free hand reaches out, finding Rex with surprising ease, her fingers resting against his fur without hesitation. "You are still here," she whispers, and this time there is a quiet warmth in her voice, something like gratitude, but deeper. Rex's head shifts slightly toward her, not fully lifting, but enough to acknowledge her presence. His ears flick once, then settle. Lily smiles, her hand moving gently along his neck. "I knew you would be," she says. Ethan watches the exchange quietly, something in his expression softening, not just because Rex is awake, but because of what this connection means, something he cannot fully explain, but does not need to. Lily tilts her head slightly, as if listening to something beyond the room. "He is different now," she says softly. Ethan raises an eyebrow slightly. "Different how?" he asks. Lily pauses for a moment, considering the feeling before answering. "Stronger, but also quieter," she says, "like he is not searching anymore." Ethan looks at Rex, then back at Lily, the words settling in a way that feels familiar. "Yeah, that sounds about right," he replies, his voice thoughtful. The doctor enters a few minutes later, his presence calm, efficient. He checks Rex, carefully observing movement, response, breathing before nodding with quiet satisfaction. "He is doing very well," the doctor says. "We will keep him for a few more hours for observation, but I do not see any reason he cannot go home today." Ethan nods once, appreciated. He says simply. Lily's hand remains on Rex, her fingers tracing lightly through his fur. "He is going home," she repeats softly, as if confirming something beyond the doctor's words. Rex exhales slowly, his body fully relaxed, now his eyes closing briefly, then opening again, as if acknowledging both of them in his own way. The room remains quiet, but full, not with tension, not with uncertainty, but with something steadier, something that does not need to be named. Ethan glances at Lily, then back at Rex, his hand resting once more against him, grounding both of them in the same space. "You picked her for a reason," he says quietly, more certain now than ever before. Lily does not respond right away. She just smiles faintly, her hand still resting where it belongs. And in that shared silence, something settles, not as a question, not as a mystery, but as a quiet truth that does not ask to be understood, only felt. By late afternoon, the hospital begins to release its grip on the day, the steady flow of footsteps thinning, the voices softening as patients are discharged and rooms slowly empty. Ethan stands near the foot of the bed, watching as the nurse removes the final monitor leads from Rex's side, each motion careful, unhurried, as if even the process of leaving requires a certain respect. Rex remains still, but alert, his head lifted slightly, now his eyes tracking every movement with calm awareness, his strength no longer in question, just quiet and contained. Ethan reaches down, picking up the worn leash from the side table, the leather softened with time, the metal clip catching a faint glint of light. He holds it for a moment before attaching it to Rex's collar, the soft click echoing more than it should in the quiet room. ready to go. Ethan says low, not as a command, but as a question. Rex shifts his weight slowly, then stands his movement steady, though measured, the kind of movement that knows its limits, but does not fear them. His paws meet the floor one by one firm. Grounded, Ethan watches closely but does not interfere. He trusts the rhythm he always has. Lily stands nearby, her hand resting lightly against the edge of the bed, her head angled toward the sound of Rex moving. Her lips curve into a small smile. "He sounds stronger," she says softly. Ethan nods. "He is," he replies simply. Lily reaches out again, and Rex steps closer without being guided, his shoulder brushing gently against her hand, as if closing a distance that was never really there. She lets her fingers rest against him one last time. "You are going home now," she whispers, and there is something in her voice that feels like both goodbye and promise. Rex remains beside her for a moment longer, his tail giving a slow, quiet movement, before he turns back toward Ethan, as if acknowledging both directions at once. Ethan glances at Lily, then back at Rex, his expression thoughtful. "You know where to find us," he says gently, not offering, but stating something that feels already understood. Lily nods slowly. "I think I do," she answers, her hand lowering back to her side. The nurse steps forward, offering final instructions, a few words about rest, about keeping activity light, about returning if anything feels off. Ethan listens, nodding when needed, but his attention remains divided between the words and the presence beside him. Once everything is said and signed, the door opens, and they step out into the hallway. The same hallway that held uncertainty just hours ago now feels different, not lighter exactly, but clearer, as if something unresolved has found its place. Rex walks beside Ethan, not pulling, not lagging, just aligned, his pace matching without effort. Lily follows a step behind, guided gently by a staff member, until they reach the front area where the outside light spills in through wide glass doors. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the polished floor, the warmth of it a quiet contrast to the controlled air inside. They pause there for a moment, not out of necessity, but because something about endings requires space. Lily turns slightly toward the door, her face angled toward the light. She cannot see, but can feel in other ways. "It is warmer out there," she says softly. Ethan nods. "Yeah, it is," he replies. Rex stands between them, his posture relaxed but attentive, as if aware that this moment carries more than just movement from one place to another. Lily takes a small step closer, her hand lifting once more, finding Rex. Without hesitation, she kneels slightly, her fingers brushing along his neck. "One last time, thank you." She whispers the words, simple, but weighted in a way that does not need explanation. Rex does not move away. He remains there, steady, present, his head lowering just enough to meet her touch, his breathing calm, his body grounded. Ethan watches quietly, something in his chest tightening, then easing all at once, not pain, not relief, just recognition. Lily stands again, her hand dropping gently to her side. "I will see you again," she says, not asking, not hoping, just stating what feels certain. Ethan nods once. "Yeah, you will," he answers. The automatic doors slide open with a soft mechanical sound, letting in the full warmth of the outside air, the scent of pavement, sunlight, and distant movement replacing the sterile calm of the hospital. Rex steps forward first, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving into the light. Ethan follows beside him, the leash loose between them, more symbol than control. Lily remains just inside the doorway for a moment longer, her head tilted slightly, as if listening to the shift between inside and out, between what was and what is becoming. Then she turns, guided gently in the opposite direction, her steps steady, her expression calm, as the doors close softly behind Ethan and Rex. The outside world feels different, not because it has changed, but because something inside them has. Rex pauses just beyond the entrance, his head lifting slightly, his ears adjusting, as if listening to something distant, something unseen. Ethan stops beside him, following that subtle shift without question. "What is it?" he asks quietly. Rex does not move, not immediately. He stands there for a second longer, then exhales slowly, his body relaxing again, whatever he sensed settling back into the quiet rhythm of the world. Ethan glances back, once toward the glass doors, then forward again, his hand resting lightly against Rex's side. "Yeah, I felt it too," he murmurs, though he does not explain what he means, because some things do not need explanation. They stand there for a moment longer in the sunlight, not moving, not speaking, just present, and then without urgency, without command, they begin to walk forward together, leaving the hospital behind, but carrying something with them that will not be left in any room or hallway, something unseen, something steady, something that once found does not disappear. The road stretches ahead in long, quiet lines, the late afternoon sun lowering just enough to soften the edges of everything. Cars passing at a distance, their sound steady, but distant, the kind of background noise that fades when something else holds your attention. Ethan walks beside Rex at an easy pace, the leash hanging loose between them, not guiding, not pulling, just there. Rex moves with calm purpose, each step measured, but confident, his body fully his again, not fragile, not uncertain, just grounded. Ethan glances down at him, occasionally, not checking, not worried, just aware, the way you are with something that matters without needing to think about it. You feeling it too? Ethan says quietly, more statement than question. Rex does not look up, but his ears shift slightly, catching something. Beyond the surface of sound, the wind moves lightly across the street, carrying the scent of warm pavement, distant grass, and something else, something faint and familiar. Ethan slows slightly, his gaze moving ahead, then to the side, as if trying to place something that is not visible. Yet, me too, he murmurs, his voice low. Rex pauses, then, just as naturally, continues forward, as if whatever passed through the moment has already settled into place. They walk in silence for a while, not empty silence, but the kind that holds understanding without needing to be filled. The neighborhood begins to change around them, storefronts giving way to quieter streets lined with trees, their leaves shifting gently in the breeze. The shadows stretch longer, now the light warmer, softer. Ethan turns onto a side street. Without thinking, his steps guided more by instinct than direction. Rex follows, without hesitation, his pace adjusting automatically, the rhythm between them unbroken as they move further from the noise of the main road. The air feels different here, calmer, less crowded. Ethan exhales slowly, his shoulders relaxing as the tension he did not realize he carried begins to ease. Feels like we needed this, he says quietly. Rex's tail gives a small movement, not energetic, just present, as if agreeing without needing to show it. They reach a small park set back from the street, the grass open and quiet, a few benches scattered along a narrow path, the place nearly empty at this hour. Ethan steps onto the path, Rex beside him, their pace slowing naturally as the space opens around them, the sound of the city fading further into the background, replaced by the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds settling for the evening. Ethan stops near one of the benches, his hand resting lightly against Rex's back as he looks out across the open space. You chose her for a reason, he says again, softer this time, less questioning, more certain. Rex stands beside him, his posture relaxed but attentive, his gaze not fixed on anything specific, just present. Ethan sits down slowly, the wood of the bench warm from the sun, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands loosely clasped. For a moment, he says nothing, just sits, breathing in the quiet, letting it settle around him. Rex moves closer, then, without being asked, lowers himself beside the bench, his body resting, but alert, his head angled slightly, as if listening to something distant, something beneath the surface. Ethan glances down at him, then out across the park again. Back there, before the car even came around the corner, he says slowly, you were already moving. Rex's ear flicks once, a small acknowledgement. Ethan nods slightly to himself. That was not training. He continues, his voice thoughtful. That was something else. The wind shifts again, carrying a faint echo of laughter from somewhere far off, a sound that fades as quickly as it comes. Ethan leans back slightly, his gaze lifting toward the sky, now tinged with the early colors of evening. And she knew it too, he adds quietly. She felt it before it happened. Rex exhales slowly, his body settling deeper against the ground, not tired, just at ease. Ethan lets the silence stretch, not uncomfortable, not empty, just full of things that do not need to be spoken. Time passes unnoticed, measured only by the slow movement of light across the ground and the subtle shift of shadows lengthening across the path. Eventually, Ethan stands again, stretching slightly, his body adjusting back to motion. Come on, he says gently. Rex rises smoothly, his movement steady and controlled, as they step back onto the path, heading toward home. The air cooler now, the day giving way to evening. Lights begin to flicker on in the distance one by one as they walk. The rhythm between them remains unchanged, the quiet understanding carried forward without effort. As they near their street, Ethan slows again, his gaze shifting ahead. A figure stands near the edge of the sidewalk, small, still facing in their direction. Lily, her posture unmistakable, even from a distance, her cane held lightly at her side, as if she has been waiting, not long, not impatiently, just present. Ethan stops completely for a moment, surprise not sharp, but quiet, passing through him. You see that, He murmurs. Rex's ears lift slightly, his body still, but focused as if he already knew. Ethan takes a step forward, then another, Rex moving beside him, without hesitation as they draw closer. Lily's face turns slightly toward them, a faint smile already forming before a word is spoken. "I knew you would come this way," she says softly, her voice calm, certain. Ethan slows to a stop a few feet away, his expression thoughtful. "How?" he asks, not skeptical, just curious. Lily tilts her head slightly. "I do not know," she answers simply. "It just felt like the right place to stand." Rex steps forward, closing the distance between them without being guided, his shoulder brushing lightly against her hand, as if completing something that had already begun earlier. Lily lets her fingers rest against him again, her smile soft but steady. "You found me again," she whispers, and in that quiet meeting between what is seen and what is felt, something settles into place, not as coincidence, not as chance, but as something quieter, something deeper, something that once recognized cannot be unseen, even without sight. For a moment none of them speak, not because there is nothing to say, but because the moment itself feels complete. Without words, the evening light settling gently around them, the air cooler, now carrying the quiet hum of a neighborhood winding down. Ethan stands a few feet away, watching as Rex remains close to Lily, his posture relaxed, but intentional, as if this place, this exact point on the sidewalk, was always where he was meant to stop. Lily's fingers rest against his fur, moving slowly, not searching, not uncertain, but familiar, as if she is tracing something she already knows. "You came back," she says softly, her voice calm, but filled with something deeper than relief, something closer to recognition. Rex exhales gently, his head lowering slightly toward her hand, his presence steady, grounded. Ethan takes another step closer, his boots quiet against the pavement, his gaze shifting between them, trying to understand not the moment, but the meaning behind it. "You said it felt right to stand here," Ethan says, his tone thoughtful. "You did not know we would pass by." Lily shakes her head. "Slightly, no. I did not know," she answers. "I just felt like I needed to be here." She pauses, then adds quietly, like someone was already on their way. Ethan studies her for a moment, then glances down at Rex, his brow tightening just slightly, not in confusion, but in recognition of something that does not follow the rules he has spent his life trusting. He felt it too. Ethan says more to himself than to her. Before anything happened earlier, he reacted like something was already there. Lily tilts her head, listening not to his words alone, but to the space around them. "Maybe it was," she says simply. Ethan exhales slowly, his shoulders lowering as he lets the thought settle without trying to challenge it. The street remains quiet. A car passes in the distance, its sound fading quickly, leaving behind the soft rustle of leaves and the faint echo of footsteps from somewhere farther down the block. Lily shifts her weight slightly, her hand still resting against Rex. "Can I walk with you for a bit?" she asks, her voice gentle but certain. Ethan nods immediately. "Yeah, of course," he replies. Rex steps forward naturally, aligning himself beside her, his pace adjusting without hesitation, as if the choice has already been made. Lily begins to walk, her cane tapping lightly against the sidewalk. 1, 2, 3, the rhythm steady, but different now, not cautious, not uncertain, just guided in a way that does not come from sight. Ethan walks on her other side, his presence quiet but attentive, his eyes scanning out of habit, but his focus drawn back again and again to the connection unfolding between them. They move down the street together, not fast, not slow, just steady, the kind of pace that allows the moment to exist without pressure. "Where do you live?" Ethan asks after a while. Lily gestures lightly with her head. "Just a few blocks that way," she says. "My aunt's house." Ethan nods. "You came out here alone?" he asks, not as criticism, just curiosity. Lily smiles faintly. "I was not alone," she replies softly. Ethan does not answer right away. He just glances at Rex, who continues walking beside her, his posture calm, his ears shifting occasionally, as if still listening to something beyond the surface of sound. The sky deepens into a soft blend of orange and blue, the last light of day stretching across the horizon, casting long shadows that move with them. As they walk, they reach the corner of another quiet street, and Lily slows slightly, her cane tapping once, then pausing. "This is me," she says gently. Ethan stops beside her, nodding once. "All right," he replies. Rex stops too, his body still but attentive, as if waiting for something more. Lily kneels carefully, her hand finding Rex once again, her fingers resting against him with that same quiet certainty. "I think you were meant to find me today," she whispers. Rex does not move away, his head lowering just enough to meet her touch, his presence steady, as ever Ethan watches the moment, his chest tightening slightly, not with tension, but with something deeper, something that feels like understanding arriving. Without explanation, Lily stands again, her hand falling gently to her side. "And I think I was meant to wait for you here," she adds softly. Ethan nods slowly. "I think so too," he says, his voice low but certain. For a moment they stand there at the edge of the quiet street, the world around them moving as it always does, but something within it shifted, something small but permanent. Lily turns slightly toward the direction of her home, then pauses. "Will I see you again?" she asks, not uncertain, not hopeful, just asking for what already feels true. Ethan looks at Rex, then back at her. "Yeah," he answers simply. "You will." Rex steps forward once more, brushing lightly against her hand one last time before stepping back to Ethan's side. Lily smiles, her fingers curling slightly, as if holding on to the feeling of that contact. "Good," she says softly, then turns and walks slowly toward her house, her steps steady, her cane tapping lightly in rhythm. As she moves away, Ethan watches until she reaches the edge of the yard, then disappears through the gate. The quiet returns, settling gently over the street. Ethan exhales slowly, his gaze lowering to Rex, who stands beside him, calm as ever. "You knew," Ethan murmurs, not asking, just stating. Rex's ears flick once, his body still grounded, as if the answer does not need to be given in words. Ethan nods slightly to himself, then turns toward home, his steps steady, his hand resting lightly against Rex's side as they walk into the fading light, carrying with them something unseen, something that does not need to be explained because it has already proven itself in the quietest way possible. The evening deepens into night as Ethan and Rex continue down the quiet street, the glow of porch lights flickering on one by one, casting soft pools of yellow across sidewalks and driveways, the air cooler, now carrying the faint scent of grass and distant cooking from open kitchen windows. Somewhere a screen door closes gently, the sound familiar, grounding. Ethan's steps slow slightly as they approach his home. A modest house set back from the street with a small front yard and a wooden porch that creaks in a way he has never bothered to fix because it tells him when someone is coming. He reaches the steps and pauses for a moment, his hand resting against the railing, worn smooth over time. Rex stands beside him, still calm, still present, his posture unchanged, but his awareness never fully gone. Ethan exhales slowly, looking up at the house, then down at Rex. "Feels different tonight," he says quietly. Rex's ears flick once, his gaze steady, as if acknowledging something unspoken. Ethan steps onto the porch, the wood creaking softly under his weight, the sound echoing into the stillness of the night. He opens the door and gestures lightly, "Come on." Rex moves inside without hesitation, his paws silent against the floor as he crosses into the familiar space. The house is dim, but not dark, a single lamp left on in the living room, casting a warm glow across worn furniture and simple walls. Ethan closes the door behind them, the click soft but final, separating inside from out. For a moment neither of them moves, the quiet of the house settling around them, not empty, not lonely, just still. Ethan walks slowly into the room, setting the leash down on the table, his fingers lingering on it for a second before letting go. Rex moves toward his usual spot near the couch, then pauses, turning slightly, as if waiting for something. Ethan notices immediately, his brow tightening just slightly. "What is it?" he asks softly. Rex remains still, his ears shifting, his head tilting just enough to suggest that something has caught his attention. Ethan follows his gaze instinctively, but sees nothing out of place, just the familiar outlines of his home, the quiet stillness of a night that should be ordinary, and yet it does not feel entirely that way. Ethan steps closer, his hand resting lightly against Rex's neck, grounding both of them in the same moment. "You hearing something again?" he murmurs. Rex does not move, not immediately, but his posture holds steady, that same subtle tension, not fear, not alarm, just awareness. Ethan exhales slowly, his shoulders relaxing even as his attention sharpens. "Yeah, I feel it too," he says quietly. After a second, Rex's body shifts slightly, then relaxes again, whatever passed through the moment settling back into the quiet. Ethan nods once to himself, not questioning, not pushing for explanation. He has learned that some things arrive and leave without needing to be understood. He moves toward the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, the sound of it filling the silence briefly before fading. He takes a sip, then leans against the counter, his gaze drifting back to Rex, who has now settled onto the floor, his body relaxed, but his eyes still open, still aware. "You picked her," Ethan says again, not for the first time, but with a deeper certainty now. "Not because she needed help, but because you knew she would understand." Rex exhales slowly, his eyes closing for a brief moment before opening again, as if acknowledging the thought. Ethan watches him for a second longer, then lets out a quiet breath. Yeah, that makes sense. He murmurs. The night stretches on slowly, the clock on the wall ticking in steady rhythm, marking time. Without urgency, Ethan moves through small routines, almost without thinking, setting things in place, checking the door, turning off one light, leaving another on, each movement familiar, grounding. But something beneath it all feels different, not wrong, not unsettling, just changed. As if the day has left something behind that will not fade with sleep. He sits down on the couch, finally leaning back, his head resting against the cushion, his eyes drifting toward the ceiling. Rex remains nearby, his breathing steady, the quiet rhythm filling the space between them. You always did see things first, Ethan says softly, his voice lower, now more reflective. Things I could not. Things no one else could. Rex does not respond, not in a way that can be seen. But his presence remains steady, unwavering. Ethan closes his eyes for a moment, not in exhaustion, but in thought, letting the quiet settle around him, the kind of quiet that does not ask for answers, only for attention. Minutes pass, or maybe longer. It is hard to tell. Time feels different tonight, slower, more deliberate. Ethan opens his eyes again, his gaze shifting toward Rex, just in time to catch a small movement. Rex's head lifts slightly, his ears adjusting, his body still but attentive once more. Ethan sits up a little straighter, his focus sharpening. What is it? He asks quietly. Rex remains still for a second longer, then his tail gives a faint movement, not signaling urgency, but recognition. Ethan watches closely, his breath steady, his hand resting lightly on his knee. You feel her, he says, not as a question, but as realization. Rex's gaze does not waver. Ethan nods slowly, his expression softening. Yeah, I do too. He murmurs. The feeling is faint, not physical, not something that can be pointed to, but present in a way that does not need proof. Ethan leans back again, his shoulders easing, his eyes remaining open this time as he lets the moment settle. Guess some connections do not end when people walk away, he says quietly. Rex exhales slowly, his body relaxing again, the tension fading into calm. The house remains still, the night deepening outside, but inside something holds steady, something unseen but certain, something that does not fade with distance or time. And as Ethan sits there beside Rex, not speaking, not questioning, just present, he understands something he has not needed to put into words before, that sometimes the things that matter most are the ones you cannot see, but the ones you feel the clearest. The night passes quietly, not in silence, but in a steady rhythm of small sounds, the soft ticking of the clock, the occasional shift of fabric as Rex breathes, the faint whisper of wind brushing against the windows, and somewhere between those sounds something deeper settles into place. Ethan eventually falls asleep on the couch, not fully stretched out, not fully at rest, but enough his body giving in to the weight of the day, his hand still resting close enough to Rex that the connection feels unbroken. Even in sleep, Rex remains awake longer, his eyes half open, his ears adjusting to every subtle shift in the house, not alert, not tense, just aware, as if holding watch over something unseen. Hours pass, the darkness outside slowly softening as the first light of morning begins to touch the edges of the sky, a faint blue glow filtering through the curtains, the world outside beginning to stir in quiet ways, a car starting in the distance, a bird calling once, then again the slow return of movement that signals a new day. Rex exhales deeply, then shifts his position, rising slowly to his feet, his movement careful but steady. He steps closer to the couch, his head lowering slightly near Ethan's hand, as if checking something that does not need checking. Ethan stirs faintly, his breathing changing as he begins to wake, his eyes opening slowly, adjusting to the soft morning light. For a moment, he does not move, just lies there, letting the quiet settle around him before his gaze shifts and finds Rex standing beside him. Morning, he murmurs, his voice rough with sleep, but calm. Rex's tail moves once, slow, deliberate. Ethan pushes himself up into a seated position, running a hand through his hair, his eyes still focused on Rex, as if confirming that everything from the day before was real. You stayed up longer than me, didn't you? He says softly. Rex blinks once, his posture relaxed. Ethan lets out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, then stands stretching slightly, his body adjusting back to motion. The house feels different in the morning, not because anything has changed physically, but because something inside it has shifted, something carried over from the day before, something that has settled into the space like a quiet presence. Ethan walks toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to let more light in. The street outside looks the same, As always, houses, still lawns, untouched cars parked where they were left, but there is a subtle sense of newness. Something that cannot be seen, but can be felt. Ethan glances back at Rex. You feel it too, he says quietly. Rex's ears flick once his gaze steady. Ethan nods slowly, then moves toward the door, grabbing his jacket without thinking about it. The motion instinctive. Rex steps toward him immediately, aligning himself beside Ethan, as if the next step has already been decided. Let us go, Ethan says simply. The door opens, and the cool morning air flows in fresh, clean, carrying the scent of dew and early sunlight. They step outside together, the porch creaking softly beneath them, the same familiar sound, now carrying a different weight. Ethan pauses for a brief moment, looking out across the street, then steps down onto the sidewalk, Rex beside him. Their pace easy, unhurried, as they begin walking again, not toward a destination, but towards something that feels already known. The neighborhood is quieter at this hour, only a few people moving about, a man watering his lawn, a woman retrieving a newspaper, the sounds of sprinklers clicking softly in the distance. Ethan turns onto the same street from the night before. Without needing to think about it, Rex follows, without hesitation, their rhythm unchanged. As they approach the corner, Ethan slows slightly, his gaze lifting ahead, the same spot where Lily had stood the evening before, empty, now the sidewalk bare, the moment gone, or maybe just moved. Ethan stops for a second, his hand resting lightly against Rex's side. Guess we were not the only ones feeling something, he murmurs. Rex remains still beside him, his posture calm, his attention steady, as if the absence itself holds meaning. Ethan exhales softly, then continues forward, not disappointed, not uncertain, just moving. As the morning unfolds around them, they walk a little farther, passing the small park again, the grass still damp from the night, the air cool and fresh. Ethan steps onto the path, his boots pressing lightly into the ground. Rex beside him, the same quiet presence, the same steady awareness. They reach the bench from the day before. Ethan pauses again, looking out across the open space, the memory of that moment still clear, still present, but not distant, not something left behind, something that continues to exist alongside the present. You changed something yesterday, Ethan says quietly, not to himself, not entirely to Rex, but to the space around them. Rex's ears shift slightly, his body still grounded. Ethan nods once. Yeah, I think you did, he adds. The wind moves gently through the trees, carrying the soft rustle of leaves, a sound that fills the silence without breaking it. And then, just as quietly as the morning began, something else enters the moment, not loud, not sudden, just present. Footsteps light and steady approaching from behind. Ethan turns slightly, not surprised, not startled, just aware. Lily walks toward them, her cane tapping lightly against the path, her posture calm, her direction certain, as if she has followed something invisible straight to this place. Good morning, she says softly before she is fully close. Ethan's expression shifts, not into surprise, but into recognition. Morning, he replies. Rex steps forward, closing the distance once again, without needing to be guided. Lily's hand lifts, finding him easily, her fingers resting against his fur with the same quiet certainty. I knew you would be here, she says, and this time Ethan does not ask how, he just nods slowly, because somewhere between yesterday and now he has stopped needing the answer. The morning light settles gently across the park, not harsh, not demanding, just present, the kind of light that does not rush anything, but reveals what is already there. Ethan stands near the bench, his posture relaxed, but attentive as Lily approaches, her steps steady, her cane tapping softly against the path. 1, 2, 3, the rhythm familiar, now no longer fragile, but grounded. Rex moves toward her without hesitation, his pace calm, his body aligned with something deeper than habit. Lily's hand lifts before he fully reaches her, as if she has already found him in the space between movement and stillness. Her fingers rest against his fur, and she smiles, not because she is surprised, but because something has been confirmed again. You are here, she says softly. Rex lowers his head slightly into her touch, his breathing slow, and even his presence steady. As ever, Ethan watches them, his expression quiet, thoughtful, not searching for meaning anymore, just witnessing it. The park around them begins to wake slowly, a jogger passing at a distance, the faint hum of a lawn mower starting somewhere beyond the trees, the soft rustle of leaves shifting in the morning breeze, but none of it pulls focus from the moment unfolding between them. Lily turns her head slightly toward Ethan. I think he listens to things we cannot hear, she says, her voice calm, not questioning, just stating something that feels true. Ethan nods slowly, his gaze resting on Rex. Yeah, I used to think that too, he replies, then pauses before adding. Now I think it is something more than listening. Lily tilts her head slightly, as if considering that. Then what is it? She asks. Ethan exhales softly, his eyes lifting briefly toward the sky before returning to Rex. I think he feels things before they happen, he says quietly. Not events, but people. Moments, like he knows where he is needed before anyone else does. Lily smiles faintly, her fingers still resting against Rex. That sounds right, she says, because yesterday, before he touched me, I already felt like I was not alone. The words settle into the space between them, not heavy, not dramatic, just real. Ethan nods, once not needing to respond, because the truth in it does not require agreement, it simply exists. They stand there for a moment longer, the three of them connected in a way that does not rely on sight or explanation, just presence, just awareness. Lily steps forward slightly, her hand still brushing lightly against Rex as she moves. Can we walk again? She asks, her voice gentle but certain. Ethan glances at Rex, then back at her. Yeah, we can, he answers. Rex aligns himself beside her once more, his pace adjusting naturally. As they begin moving along the path, the rhythm returns immediately, Lily's cane tapping softly in time with their steps. 1, 2, 3, the sound blending with the quiet of the park. Ethan walks on her other side, his presence steady, not guiding, not directing, just there. The path curves gently ahead, lined with trees whose shadows stretch long across the grass. The air carries a faint warmth now, the sun rising higher, but still soft enough to feel calm. As they walk, Ethan notices something small but clear. Rex's movement is not reactive, not scanning, not anticipating in the way he once did. It is calmer, more certain, as if whatever he needed to find has already been found. He is not searching anymore, Ethan says quietly. Lily nods slightly, as if she already knew. No, he is not, she replies. He is staying. They continue walking the distance, passing slowly, without being measured. Time feels different here, not stretched, not rushed, just present, as if each step is enough on its own. Eventually, they reach the far end of the park, where the path meets the street. Lily slows slightly, her cane tapping once, then stilling. This is where I turn, she says softly. Ethan nods. All right, he replies. Rex stops beside her, his posture relaxed but attentive as always. Lily kneels once more, her hand finding him easily, her fingers resting against his fur in that same familiar way. I think you found me for a reason, she whispers. Rex remains still, his head lowering slightly toward her hand, his presence unwavering. Ethan watches quietly, his chest easing into something that feels like understanding without needing definition. Lily stands again, her hand falling gently to her side. And I think I found you too, she adds softly. Ethan nods once, his voice low but certain. Yeah, I think we all did. Rex steps forward, brushing lightly against her hand one last time before returning to Ethan's side. Lily smiles, then turns, walking toward the street, her steps steady, her posture calm, her cane tapping lightly. As she moves away, not uncertain, not alone, just guided in a way that does not need sight. Ethan watches for a moment longer, then exhales softly, his hand resting against Rex's side. Guess some things do not need to be seen to be real, he murmurs. Rex's ears flick once, his body still grounded as always. Ethan nods to himself, then turns back toward the path, the morning light now fully settled around them, the world continuing as it always does, but something within it changed, not loudly, not visibly, just quietly and completely. And as they walk forward together, Ethan no longer looks for explanations, no longer tries to define what cannot be measured,